This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 236, Content Strategy 101, an interview with Melanie Seibert. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you grow your tribe and your bottom line through insanely good content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is July 20th, 2017. Hello, or as we say in Texas, howdy, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, this podcast is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play Music, so if you like what you hear, please feel free to click on over and subscribe. I also invite you to download our complimentary ebook, Ninja Secrets of B2B Blogging. Download today to learn the secrets to a B2B blog that will enchant your customers and leave your competitors green with envy. To snag your free copy, go to contentmarketinggift.com. Now, I know it's only July. Actually, I can't believe it's almost, I'm talking to my friends with kids and they are getting ready to go back to school in a couple of weeks. So the summer and the year are continuing to fly by. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, it is still only July, but Content Marketing World will be here before you know it. And this year, I will be serving as a moderator. Now, just yesterday, they released the track assignments, and I will actually be hosting the track. I think it's on the second day of the conference, but it will be the track on data and analytics, which is so exciting for me because that's an area where I really want to learn more. So, really looking forward to it. So, this year's event, as always, it is going to be in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's set for September 5th through 8th. So, if you are in the States, that equates to the rest of the week after the Labor Day holiday. Now, I hear hotels are already starting to fill up. So if you are interested in going, now is the time to make those reservations and to register. Speaking of registration, I have a promo code that will save you $100 off your registration. When you register at contentmarketingworld.com, enter the code RESONANCE100. That's RESONANCE 100. That's all caps, no spaces, no punctuation, and that will get you $100 off your registration fee. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, this is an affiliate code, and I do receive a small commission on every registration with this code. Have to keep the lawyers happy and let you know that. Again, the code is RESONANCE100, all caps, no spaces, and this website is contentmarketingworld.com. And if you're planning on being there at Content Marketing World, toss me a tweet at Rach Parker, and maybe we can grab some coffee together during a break. Okay, last week we were delighted to welcome Jeremy Enns of Aesthetic Productions, who shared his insights on how to get started in podcasting. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to check it out on iTunes or via the RSS feed. Today we have another special guest. Melanie Seibert will be here to teach us the basics of content strategy. No, not content marketing strategy, content strategy. What is the difference and why is it important? Well, stay tuned and you will find out. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. Just one item in the news feed today, but it is a biggie. So first it was Facebook, then it was Twitter, and now LinkedIn is about to be the next social network to allow native video uploads directly to the network. So currently, if you want to share video on LinkedIn, you either have to link to a YouTube or a Vimeo or video on another platform and link to it from LinkedIn. But according to Marketing Land, LinkedIn is testing a feature that will allow you to upload video directly. And just like on Facebook, they will autoplay in the news feed with the sound on mute. Videos can be up to 10 minutes long. And according to a LinkedIn spokesperson, the feature will be rolled out to all users in the coming months. So big development to look forward to from LinkedIn. Okay, our content hit of the week is a post called How to Use SEO Data in Your Social Media Strategy. This is by Jordan Castler over on the Marketing Land blog. Now, many of us, myself included, fall into the habit of thinking about SEO and social media as two separate little boxes. They overlap a little bit because you're getting some of that, some of your site traffic from social, but we tend to think of them as very separate things. And yes, they do work very differently, but as Jordan points out, and I quote here, if you want a strong social media strategy, you simply can't ignore SEO, unquote. He then goes on to offer a deep dive into several ways that our SEO activities can enrich what we do on social media. It is an excellent read, and I will, of course, share the link in the blog post for this episode at resonancecontent.com/podcast. That's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please tweet it to me at Rach Parker so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment, Content Strategy 101, an interview with Melanie Seibert. In her role as senior content strategist at mobile agency WillowTree, Melanie Seibert draws on over 17 years of experience planning and delivering content for interfaces. She has worked for companies that include Razorfish, Rackspace, and Crutchfield, and has taught an Introduction to Content Strategy class at General Assembly. Today, Melanie supports the WillowTree design team by incorporating content strategy and content design principles into the user experience design process, helping the team deliver high-quality apps, websites, and other digital products to clients. And today, she joins us to educate us on the basics of content strategy. Without further ado, here's my interview with Melanie Seibert. Hey, Melanie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rachel, it's so good to talk to you.
Oh, good. Great to talk to you. Thanks. So I just read your official bio, but can you give us a little bit of a more personal introduction to who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I work as a content strategist for an agency that makes primarily mobile apps, but also websites and other digital products. How I came into this field is kind of, interesting maybe. I had an English degree and I started out as a copywriter, and then I went into technical writing, and I kind of bounced back and forth between those two things until I found content strategy, and I knew that was what I wanted to do. So I've been doing content strategy for about 5 years now. Mm-hmm. And I have 4 kids, and I live in Virginia near Charlottesville.
Awesome. So I'm gonna hark back to my 8th grade composition class, where we're always taught to define our terms before we get into a deep discussion. So please enlighten us. Tell us, what is content strategy?
Yes, the big question. Mm-hmm. Content strategy is the process of planning for, creating, and maintaining content that is useful and usable. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot in that definition that we can unpack, but that's it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Now, I think a lot of folks tend to get confused between content strategy and content marketing strategy. So explain to us the difference between the two.
Yeah, that's a great question. I see this a lot, and I noticed this confusion maybe a year or two ago, and that led me to write a blog post for Content Marketing Institute, which people can Google if they're interested. It's called a Take on 3 Confusing Content Terms. But in essence, what it says is that content strategy is a holistic process of planning for content. Content marketing strategy is the same thing, but it hones in on marketing content specifically. So what I mean by that is, for example, I'm a content strategist, and in my day-to-day work, I work mainly on products, apps, web apps, things like that. Whereas a content marketing strategist would work more on the types of content that are used higher in the funnel to drive awareness and maybe consideration, but not so much product content itself. So I think of content marketing strategy as happening earlier in the funnel. And Marcia Johnston, who edits the Content Marketing Institute blog, she made a really interesting comment once that content marketing content may not even mention the company's name or products, which I had never thought about before. But when you're at the top of the funnel driving that content for awareness, there's no sort of hard sell there. There's not even a soft sell. It's just very much for awareness. So that's how I think of it.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. And in fact, I was just on, of all websites, Moz today, looking at one of their Whiteboard Fridays, and they're talking about content strategy. I was like, oh no, Mustache Man, you got it wrong. That is content marketing strategy. So it's not just it's not just lower level folks who are confusing.
Yeah, you see that a lot, and I see it especially in job postings. I see a lot of content strategist job postings where they're talking about wanting someone to write blog posts or even be a blog editor. And to me, if you're doing like articles, white papers, those type of materials to me are definitely in the realm of content marketing strategy.
Yep, absolutely. So Melanie, as you mentioned, you've been a content strategist for several years. How have you seen, since you started, overall interest evolve in this, in content strategy? Did you have to do a lot more explaining when you first started out what content strategy is, and are you seeing a lot more awareness of it these days?
Yeah, definitely. And you've probably experienced this too, but in the early days, I'm sure you remember, a lot of people would just have no idea what content strategy was supposed to refer to. That's really changed a lot, and it's kind of become something of a buzzword now. Even though, like we said, people may or may not mean the same things when they use it, but most people have heard of it as a term. And I think we have, people like Christina Halverson to thank for that, people who've really been out there promoting the discipline for years. But yeah, so definitely there's been a growth in interest. There's been, I would say, an explosion in job postings and content strategy. But there's also, it's really interesting to see kind of a shift in terminology. So I've been noticing new terms coming to prominence, like content design. Content design has become a popular term over the past couple years to talk about specifically the collaboration between maybe a user experience designer and a content strategist in the phase of the project where you're creating the content and figuring out how the visual part and the text part fit together. So it's really interesting to see these new ideas and really new angles on an existing field and existing topic kind of come out, because it shows me different ways to think about this thing that I do.
Yep, absolutely. So as far as what drives a company to say, okay, we need a content strategist, obviously the CMO doesn't roll out of bed and say, I'm going to have eggs for breakfast and we're going to hire a content strategist. So what are some of the pain points? What are some of the challenges that compels a director of marketing or a CMO to say, yes, okay, we need a content strategist on our team?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think you're right. It's usually pain that compels this decision. I think in my case there were definitely some content heavy projects where the agency had plenty of design. Well, I won't say plenty because they had a lot of work, but they did have designers. They did not have any writers or content specialists, and the designers were having to fill in that role. And I don't know about the designers you've worked with. The designers I know do not enjoy writing or that being like a big part of their day-to-day tasks. So it's just not what they really wanted to do when they, took a design job in most cases. So that was a big pain point for the team. And they decided they need to hire and invest in, a content strategist. I think that's a common story, and it really drives the point home with stakeholders that content strategy is important. Another thing that happens is botched content migrations. I've seen that happen before where, leadership maybe didn't think that a website launch or a content migration was going to be a big deal. And they kind of put content in as a phase of the process and didn't necessarily understand that it needed to be planned for from the beginning, and that things can go south real fast when you have that scenario. So content migrations are a big pain point too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And it's funny. I was looking on the homepage for your course, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you talked about situations like you've got a project manager who insists that his product be featured on the homepage, or you've got and you've got this list of all different things. It's like everybody thinks they need a microsite and things like that.
Right.
So does a content strategist do a lot of that kind of juggling and really streamlining that experience?
Yeah, some of that for sure. I think the function of the content strategy itself is to help you kind of zero in on what are we trying to say and what are we not trying to say, so that you can rule things out and you can say, okay, well, we don't need a timeline of whatever the company history, or if we have it, it doesn't need to be as high profile. It helps you to set your goals for your content and also to prioritize them. So yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So what does a content describe for us a day in the life of a content strategist? What kind of stuff do you work on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Well, there's no typical day, probably like most jobs.
Right.
It changes a lot, but some of the things that I might do, I've done workflow mapping workshops with clients where, they were a brand new company and they needed to hire an editorial team, and they really didn't have a content workflow, but they knew they needed to publish content. So, one day I might be helping a client figure out, okay, what's your workflow going to be and how do you staff for that? Another day, and this is pretty common, I work with a team of designers, and they will come to me and ask me, for help with specific wording. So that's very tactical and less strategic. But since I have writing experience, they're like, help me figure out, does this say what it needs to say? Or how do I cut it from 200 words to 40 words or something like that? And then since I work on apps, I've been doing some work on things like push notifications and app store listings and things like that. Those are probably a little bit more marketing channels. So it really varies day to day. It's interesting for me to see the mix of like consulting that I can do on the operational side with people issues like workflows and how to staff things and governance, and then consulting that I can do on the content itself. So I think that both of those vectors, the people part and the content part, are really what makes up content strategy.
Yep, absolutely. So if a marketing director or if a marketing team is looking to bring in a content strategist, what kind of skill sets are they going to be looking for?
Yeah, so a lot of times, so first I'll say that the Content Marketing Institute was really smart, and they published a article about two different types of content strategists, a front-end content strategist and a back-end content strategist. So I think the first thing is to figure out what type of content strategist do you need. You can find, and I'll explain what those are, but you can find a content strategist who can do both, but most people are primarily one or the other. So a front-end content strategist is going to have more editorial skills. They'll probably have a writing or an editing background, and they're going to be really good and really tuned in to how your messaging is coming across. Is it your brand voice and tone? Is it working? And then the back-end content strategist may have more of a development or project management background, and they're going to feel really at home in things like setting up, configuring content management systems and modeling content, structuring it so that it fits into the content management system correctly, and making sure that everything works for the content from a technical perspective. So, I enjoy both of those sides of content strategy, but my background and my strengths are definitely leaning more in the front end direction. So it's really important, I think, for hiring managers to understand that there are different skill sets and different types of content strategists. And as far as personalities, I think that a really good content strategist is curious and able to kind of get into any type of project or any type of detail that comes up that needs to be figured out. I mean, we're kind of the people who say, hey, if it needs to get done, it needs to get figured out. I'm going to like jump in and figure out how to do it, even if it's technically, not content. If it's information architecture or maybe a little bit of project management, I need to follow up with a client. I can be flexible and do that. And, it doesn't bother me.
Yep, absolutely. So you just mentioned information architecture, and I think earlier you mentioned user experience. So it sounds like in terms of overall objectives, the content strategist has a lot of common ground with those user experience folks. So in a perfect world, how does the content strategist and the UX person work together?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, going back to our distinction between the content strategist and the content marketing strategist, this is really more specific to the content strategist who works more on the product rather than on the marketing for the product. So, I work within a user experience department and I work with user experience designers. And I think there are a couple of different ways that can play out. In my case, I realized, not too long ago that I was kind of approaching my role in a way that wasn't a good fit for my team. So in my team, the designers are extremely well-rounded. They understand how to do visual design, interaction design, motion design, and they've been, until we had, content specialists on staff, they had been doing content design as well and writing for the interfaces. And I realized that just because I joined the team, that's not going to change overnight necessarily. And what I need to do, instead of trying to insert myself into the process and take over something that they had been doing, I need to come alongside them and say, okay, I see that you're doing this, and how can I help you do it? Do content design better? How can I help you feel supported and confident in doing it? Because sometimes designers don't feel terribly confident when they're writing. And I realized that this is kind of a similar process that the first Facebook content strategist used when she started there, and she, has talked about her experience and described that I think in Christina Halverson's book. So, so that's one way it can work as with the content strategist being kind of a consultant with the designers and collaborating with them on the content in the design. And then it can also work where, if I had a writer for every project, then that writer or that content strategist could handle the content for every project and kind of be the specialist for that project. So we're not there yet, but we could get to that point someday where all of the content work is offloaded onto the content strategist for the project. And that would kind of be my dream, but one day we'll get there.
Right, exactly. So I know that we have in the audience for this podcast, we have a lot of wonderful content writers and copywriters. So if one of our listeners were to hear this and say, oh wow, content strategy, that sounds like something that would really interest me, what would be the first step for kind of upgrading their skills or adding to their skill set and becoming true content strategists?
Yeah, I've definitely been in that position myself. And what I did was I started reading books. The first book that I think anyone in that position should read is Christina Halverson's Content Strategy for the Web. And the second edition is the most up to date, and it's super helpful. It's really indispensable for anyone, not only if you want to become a content strategist, but if you're working with one or you're just curious about the field. It's really helpful. And so I would start there. There are many helpful blogs, like I've mentioned, the Content Marketing Institute, and of course your podcast is an excellent resource that they already know about because they're listening to it right now. And then I started thinking about my process of becoming a content strategist and how helpful would it have been for me if I would have had someone to kind of guide me and coach me along the way and help me sort of take things that were going to be useful from each resource, each book or each blog, and put it together for me. And that was kind of how I came up with the idea for a course. So I have an introductory email course that I think would be helpful for anybody who's interested in content strategy. And yeah, I think we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my next question was about the big course that you're planning, getting started in content strategy. And I know this is brand new. This is something that you're just launching. So tell me about the thought process, how you discovered the need for it, how you went about putting it together, and what people can expect.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, my thought process was really trying to guide new practitioners into content strategy from editorial work or whatever they've been doing. And what I did was I was living in Austin a couple years ago, and I reached out to General Assembly there, which is, if you've never heard of General Assembly, they do courses and immersive coursework and workshops for people who want to change careers. And they really specialize in development and user experience. And I said, hey, I noticed that you don't have any content strategy courses yet. Would you like me to come in and teach an introductory 2-hour course? And they were like, yeah, that'd be great. So I did about 4 of those. And my friends, I would promote it on my Facebook or whatever. And my friends who lived in other cities would say, hey, this looks great. I would love to come, but I'm not in Austin. Is there anything online? And I was like, well, I'm sure there has to be, a ton of content strategy courses online. So I went to look, and I found, a few content marketing courses, but I really had a hard time finding content strategy courses that focused on user experience and, that the product or the website content strategy. So I was like, well, I've already gone to all the trouble of creating this course for General Assembly. I should just put it online. And being I was a little naive about the course creation process. And I was like, I could probably, just film this and put it online in a couple months. And that was about 14 months ago.
Right.
So, a year later, I've finally finished videoing everything and got everything together, I think, to where it's actually a cohesive course. So this is meant for, it could be a student, but anybody who's already, certainly people who are already on web teams or online writers, or anybody interested in content strategy could take this course and understand what is the goal of content strategy, what types of, what do we mean when we talk about usable content? And then how do I get there? So what's my roadmap for sort of integrating content strategy into my digital projects so that I have that usable content at the end of it. And so that was how that came about.
Great. Good. So is it still in development right now? Are you still in the
no,
process?
It's done.
Okay.
The course itself is all put together, and I'm planning to launch it on July 24th. So right now I'm kind of just getting out there and letting people know that it is going to be a thing on July 24th.
Okay. Great. And so I understand that you have a different offer for our audience today for some actual free training. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I created a free 7-day email course. It's kind of a bridge for people who think they might be interested in content strategy and really want to get started right away. So this email course is kind of the introduction, and it gives you some really quick wins that you can do no matter what you're doing. You could even be a student and not be working in digital and still sort of implement this 7-day program and have some content strategy experience at the end of it. So your listeners can get access to the free 7-day course if they go to my website, which is proskiln.com. It's pros, like PROSE kiln, KILN.com. And there's a sign up form there for the free 7-day course. And during that course, there will also be, a link pointing to the longer course. So if students want to learn more after this, they're certainly welcome to go on and explore the paid course, Getting Started with Content Strategy.
Awesome. Well, I hope we have some budding content strategists who will be who will be learning what they need to learn so they can spread their wings.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
We need more content strategists for sure.
We do, and that actually brings up another point, because I was looking at the page for this new course, and you're talking about the demand for content strategists and some of the salary implications. The difference between just being a copywriter and also being a content strategist could be pretty considerable, right?
Yeah, so the salary difference between copywriter and content strategist is pretty dramatic. So the creative group actually did a survey, and their 2017 salary guide, they found that a content strategist makes on average about 58% more than the average web copywriter. So that's based on their data. And I think that may be due to a number of factors. I think, the perception of content strategy being a little bit more holistic. And I think that content strategists may have experience in a wide range of fields. There may be a number of reasons for that, but that fact for me is pretty compelling. That's not the main reason I became a content strategist. I became a content strategist because I was asking a lot of questions about, why am I being asked to write this? And is this the best thing for us to write? And those are the questions that a content strategist should ask. But it's definitely interesting for me to see the salary sort of progression and how that breaks down.
Yep, absolutely. So again, your website is proskiln.com, and I think that's really like a kiln where you make pottery, which is a great brand.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say and have people understand it, but I'm glad you like it. Thank you.
Yeah. So if our listeners would like to follow you on the web or on social media, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, I do spend a lot of time on Twitter. You can find me at Melanie_Seibert, and my last name is Seibert. So yeah, Twitter is a really good way to find me. There's also a Facebook page for my website, which is Proskiln. If you look up Proskiln on Facebook, I'm sure it's the only one that you'll find. So those are two really good ways to get a hold of me.
Well, great. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck with the course.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's been really great talking to you.
All right. Take care.
Many thanks again to Melanie for joining us today to chat about Content Strategy 101. Again, to access her free 7-day email course, Become a Content Strategist, go to her website, proskiln.com. That's PROSEKILN.com. As we mentioned, her more complete course is going to be rolling out here very soon, and if you are on the list from the 7-day email course, then you will be notified about the big course when it is readily available. And remember to follow her on Twitter at Melanie_Seibert. That's Seibert. Now, if you are driving or otherwise occupied, never fear, because I will, as always, share these links in the post for this episode at resonancecontent.com/podcast. If you have any questions or want to add to the conversation, feel free to tweet me at @RachParker. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. As we mentioned during my discussion with Melanie, the first step to a strong content strategy is the content audit. It's so important, because how do you know? You may know where you want to get to, but you got to know where you are and what you need to do to get there, to get towards your goal. So it is so important to do regular audits of your website. So many companies, and I've been guilty of this as well. We tend to treat our website content as a once and done thing. Get the page up, get all the coding done, and then forget about it. But we should at least be doing regular audits once a year, if not once a quarter, depending on the size of your site and how important your site is to your business. So what you want to do with this audit I compare it to organizing your closet. What's the first thing you do when you organize a closet? You take everything out and you look at it, right? Well, a content audit is no different. You're going to go through every page of your website, review the on-page content as well as the metadata, and you're going to ask yourself questions like this. How well does your content support the user experience? And that's something that we need to consider. What is the journey that the content takes the user on? What do we expose them to on the homepage? Then when they get to the second level of content, how do we draw them in a little bit more? And how do we give them more information at that third level, et cetera, et cetera? What kind of journey is our content taking our site visitors on? Also consider, have there been any changes in your branding, in your positioning, maybe in your product offerings? Are there any of those changes that might require a content update? I'm thinking of one client in particular that's in the technology space, and they're constantly revising the way that they talk about their products and services. Now the products are the same, the names are the same, but the way that they talk about them is constantly evolving. So if that's the case with you, or if you've recently revisited your messaging, it's so important to make sure that your website is updated with all that current messaging. Also, does the content align with best practices in online content writing? Sometimes pages just pop up, and ideally everything should go through your process with the online marketing department, but sometimes they just kind of pop up there. Maybe somebody's on vacation or somebody went in and made some updates without going through protocols. So make sure that everything that is up there is in line with your online brand and with best practices in online content writing. Remember, your website content is not a set it and forget it thing. We need to revisit it on a regular basis and make sure that it continues to serve your brand and, more importantly, your audience. Okay, campers, that's it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you like what you've heard, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play Music or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. Also, if you want to learn more about content marketing, you will definitely want to grab a copy of my book, The Content Marketing Coach, Everything You Need to Get in the Game and Win, which is available in book and Kindle format. To learn more about the book and to download a free chapter, visit contentmarketingcoachbook.com. As you know, I always like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from Robert Kiyosaki. He once said, quote, "Don't let the fear of losing be greater than the excitement of winning," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.